NBA draft is right around the corner, and every year brings in a new wave of young talent ready to make their mark at the next level. The 2026 NBA draft has been one of the most anticipated classes in recent memory. So many talented players ready to begin their NBA journeys. Today, I'm going pick by pick through my 2026 NBA mid to late first round mock draft as we did the lottery portion last episode, so make sure you guys go check that out. I'll be breaking down each team's fit and why I have each prospect landing where based on their strengths and weaknesses and what type of impact they could have at the next level. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Hardware Hoops presented by DJ Sports Show with your host, DJ Hamilton, the place where we talk all hoops all the time. And without further ado, let's get into the show. So at number 15, I have Cameron Carr, shooting guard from Baylor, going to the Chicago Bulls. 6'5", 185 pounds, 21 years old with a 7-foot wingspan. What stands out to me about Carr is he's one of the most dangerous perimeter shooters in the class and arguably the best pure shooting wing available. Last season at Baylor, he averaged 18.9 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.6 assists, a little bit under a steal, and 1.3 blocks, while shooting 49.4% from the field and 37% from three on 6 attempts per game with a 58% effective field goal percentage. He was the only player in Baylor history to average 18 or more points while shooting over 49% from the field and 37% from three on at least 6 attempts per game from downtown. He makes sense here for the Chicago Bulls because the Bulls, they were a good shooting team last year in terms of three-point makes, but percentage-wise, they were 19th in the league. Carr is one of the best shooters in this class. He's a guy who's great off the catch. He was 92nd percentile on catch and shoot threes and off the dribble threes. While he was 70% of his threes were assisted, he showed enough shot-making versatility to attack closeouts and create his own jumper when needed. So he's not only a guy who you give the ball to and you have to spot him up and create looks for him, he can get his own offense as well. He has a beautiful shooting stroke with a high release point with effortless range, and that makes his jumper difficult to contest. One thing I also love about him is he doesn't stay stagnant or stuck in a certain area of the court. He's constantly moving without the basketball. He knows how to relocate into open windows, coming off pin downs, and that forces defenders to have to chase him around screens and make them work defensively. And he also was elite in transition, 1.31 points per possession in transition, which was in the 98th percentile nationally in college basketball last season. He's a dynamic athlete with legitimate vertical pop who can finish above the rim and add value as a cutter and transition finisher. And I think that works perfectly with the Chicago Bulls when you have a point guard like Josh Giddey who can facilitate, who's a big point guard, and who can make guys better. He's going to find that open man. And playing with Carr, who's a great transition athlete, that's going to make Giddey's life much easier. And also his shooting ability, that's going to spread the floor open for guys like Matas Bazelis and Anthony Simons on your roster who are 3-level scorers who, can go to the rim. And then when you have shooters around them, that's going to open up the lane for them and make guys have to make sure they respect the shooters that they have on this roster. So if I'm the Chicago Bulls, this makes sense for them. He's not just a shooter. He also can defend too. He averaged 1.3 blocks per game with a 4.0 block percentage. So he's not just someone who can shoot and play offensively. I think he's going to be an elite 3-and-D type of player with some shot creation ability. You don't see this type of shot blocking production, especially for a wing with that type of shot blocking production. And he has pretty solid lateral mobility. I like to see him add strength to his frame. He has kind of a thin frame on him at 6'5", 6'6". He kind of tends to have some lapses defensively at times. I need to see him be more active defensively, be more consistent on the end. It kind of fluctuates time to time, but he has the physical tools to be a really quality defender. He's still developing as a self-creator. Much of his offense currently comes from movement shooting, transition opportunities, and actions generated by his teammates. I don't expect him to be a guy who's going to create his own shot most of the time, especially early on in his career. Playing with a guy like Giddey is going to create easy looks for him, and Bazelis as well. Those guys are going to be the primary guys with the ball in the hands, and Simons as well as on that Bulls team. So I can see Carr just coming in, playing his role as an elite shooter who spreads the floor and also someone who can defend. The biggest question will be if he can evolve into an elite complementary scorer, into that player who can consistently create offense against NBA defenses. I think he's going to be an NBA wing whose shooting gravity will earn him minutes early in his career. He has a great combination of movement shooting, athleticism, transition scoring, and defensive upside that fits perfectly in today's pace and space era. If he adds strength and continues to improve as a creator, he has a pathway to become much more than a specialist. And I personally believe he has a chance to become one of the steals in this draft class. He has tons of upside. I think his best case, he's a starting caliber two-way wing who provides elite floor spacing, scores efficiently at all three levels, and develops enough shot creation to become a legitimate third offensive option on a winning team. And then his floor, I see a rotational guy who's a shooting specialist and floor spacer whose value comes primarily from movement shooting, transition scoring, and complementary offensive play. His comparisons to me are Aaron Wiggins and Trey Murphy III. I think he's going to be a guy who is an elite 3-and-D wing and also athletic to play above the rim. So I have Cameron Carr going to Chicago Bulls at number 15. At number 16, I have Nate Ament, the freshman forward from Tennessee, go to the Memphis Grizzlies. 6'10", 211 pounds, 19 years old with a 6'11" wingspan, just about 7 feet. He is an elite positional size wing, 6'10". That allows him to play either forward spot. He's fluid with the ball in his hands and can attack closeouts or low by bigger defenders who lack his speed and mobility. His size, length, and mobility give him significant upside as a multi-positional defender. I think he's going to be a guy who can defend wings immediately and maybe potentially fours. I think he can also defend small ball fives, but not initially in his NBA career. He has to add strength to his frame before he can do that. But if he adds that strength, 15, 20 pounds over the course of his career, the first 3-4 years, I could see him being able to guard small ball fives, especially in today's modern NBA. He fits the Memphis Grizzlies because they're on a different timeline now. I had them selecting Caleb Wilson in my lottery mock edition. Make sure you guys listen to that first. And I think they can go some big jumbo size wings in this draft class if they go Caleb Wilson at 3 and then select Ament here, who I think is going to fall in that mid first round area. Maybe some people are saying he might fall in the late lottery, but I think he's more of a mid first round pick. I didn't really love what I saw in terms of consistency with him at Tennessee, but he does have a lot of upside. In Memphis, you're in a rebuilding situation. You're trying to move off Ja Morant, who I think is going to get traded this offseason. So you need to acquire as much talent as you possibly can. And I think Ament is a guy who is kind of a swing pick. You're a team with no expectations. There won't be a lot of pressure on him to have to perform. You're not trying to win. You're just trying to build a foundation for the future. And I think he can provide that and be a guy where you can slowly integrate him into the system and build with him and polish and work on the kinks in his game. I think he's someone as well who has intriguing face-up scoring upside. He has great size, high release point. He can shoot over smaller defenders. He has solid shooting mechanics and touch that I think suggests great long-term growth as a shooter. 41% on dribble jumpers, 33% on catch and shoot jumpers last year. And when he's aggressive, which is hot and cold sometimes, but when he's aggressive, he knows how to put pressure on defenses. He can get to the foul line. He averaged over 7 free throws attempts per game at Tennessee last year. You're betting on a guy who's 6'10" forward with great ball skills, mobility, and defensive versatility. And in today's NBA, that's one of the most coveted archetypes that you want. Dynamic, apex, tall, jumbo-sized wings who can do a little bit of everything and also who are mobile. One thing I'm worried about with him is his efficiency. He's 40% from the field, 33% from 3. He had 20 games last year at Tennessee where he shot under 45% from the field and 11 games with 15 points or fewer while shooting under 45%. He can disappear during stretches of games and occasionally play without real aggression offensively. And despite averaging over 7 free throw attempts per game, there are multiple games where he failed to pressure the defense and didn't really get to the foul line. He had 5 games with 6 or fewer free throw attempts, fewer than 12 field goal attempts, and under 45% shooting from the field. 2 of those performances came in the NCAA tournament against Miami and then the eventual national champion, Michigan, where he failed to record a single trip to the foul line. And when people were talking about him as a lottery pick, that's what I was kind of worried about. Does he have that killer instinct every single game to go out and attack, be aggressive, and not let the last shot or a bad game affect him mentally? I know he's a young kid, but I didn't see the consistency for him to be a top 10 pick. Some people think he could be a top 10, late top 10 pick, maybe 9, 10 range, or even 11, 12. But coming into the year, he was expected to be a top 5 pick coming into the year because people were that high on him. So I think Nate Ament, he's a extremely thin player. He's going to have to get stronger as well. His finishing efficiency has to get better, 48% at the rim, 43% on layups. That's going to have to get better, especially for a player of his size. You got to be finishing better. But I think overall, he's one of the highest upside forwards in this class because of this rare combination of ball skills, size, mobility, and defensive versatility. He remains more of a projection and production at this stage, but I think his best case scenario, he'll be a dynamic two-way forward who can develop into a matchup nightmare offensively and versatile defensive chess piece for an organization. His floor, I see a rotational forward whose inconsistency as a shooter, finisher, and offensive initiator limits him to a complementary role. To me, he reminds me of Austin Daye and a little bit of Zachary Rissaker. And let's hope he doesn't turn into Rissaker, even though Rissaker is still a young player in the league who was the first overall pick back in 2024. For y'all who don't know, who's from France. He kind of has the same frame and kind of style of play. But let's hope he doesn't turn out like Rissaker, who so far has been a disappointment as the number 1 pick. So that's something we'll have to monitor. But Ament, he has upside. We'll see how he can put all the tools together. But I think going to a situation like Memphis, where he doesn't have a lot of pressure on go to an organization that's trying to win, they're really in a rebuild phase, makes sense for him here. Next up at number 17, I have Karim Lopez, the forward from Mexico who plays for the New Zealand Breakers. Thunder, selected him here. 6'9", 222 pounds, 19 years old, 7 feet wingspan. He has elite positional size, 6'9", with the versatility to play either forward spot, and he has a strong frame that also suggests he can add more muscle. He's one of the top international prospects in the class, and he's considered to be the first and best NBA prospect to ever come out of Mexico. The best, excuse me. He has high defensive upside thanks to his size, length, and instincts, and he finished 6th in the NBL in total steals with 37 and 19 steals per game with 1.2. And I love how he's an aggressive scorer who attacks the rim with purpose, can create his own shot in the mid-range. He's not a knockdown shooter yet, especially from three-point range, but the defenses can't ignore his shot creation ability. He's comfortable with the ball in his hands. He has some point forward ability, a little bit, show a little flashes of those in NBL, who can initiate his own offense, create opportunities for teammates. And this fits perfectly for the Thunder. You're now getting to a point where some of your guys like Cason Wallace and all these guys, they're all going to have to get paid soon. And so you're going to have a new group of guys on rookie scale contracts, especially in today's NBA, who can come in, provide for you, who have experience, and can play a role. And we saw with J-Dub out this year, who was out a lot with hamstring injuries especially. You're going to need a guy who can score, who's not afraid, and around the 6'7" to 6'9" range, a wing, who can go get his own, who can put pressure on the defense. AJ Mitchell, I know, turned into a guy this year for the team and will be going forward. But you want to add more depth, especially in that front court area. So when like J-Dub is out, if you had a guy like 6'8", 6'9", who can get his own shot and put pressure on defenses, and just, hopefully be a guy who also is confident in what he's doing, he probably could have beaten the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. And I think Lopez fits perfectly here. And they have a great developmental staff in OKC. I think his jumper will definitely get better if he were to get drafted to the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's something that'll be his swing skill, because he shot only 35% from 3 in the last 2 NBL seasons on a relatively low volume. So that's something he'll have to significantly improve. But look how OKC has developed SGA, J-Dub, Chet. I'm confident in the developmental system over there in OKC. And I think Karim Lopez going here makes sense. And I know he has some defensive lapses as well. He'll need to get better defensively. I don't like his defensive consistency, but going to an organization that has winning habits, a winning formula, and a great developmental staff, I think this could do wonders for his career. I don't know if I ever see him being an all-star, but I could see him being somebody who can end up his best case. I see someone who's a solid starter at the NBA level, two-way starting forward, could defend multiple positions, facilitate the offense, and maybe become a third option on a really good team. I don't ever see a primary or a secondary option, but I think he could be his ceiling, a really good starter who's a third option on a solid playoff team. I think if his three-point shot becomes more reliable, his ceiling will definitely raise on what he could potentially be due to his size, his instincts, and versatility. His floor, I see a valuable rotational forward whose size, defense, and playmaking keep him on the floor despite his inconsistent shooting. He reminds me kind of a Solomon Hill and Tristan da Silva. So I have Lopez going to the Thunder, and I think he's a great fit for the Thunder, who are trying to get back and win a championship next year. And this is a team that has the potential to be a dynasty. So you want to continue to get the pieces, especially as some of your other guys start getting more expensive, especially around your main core 3 and J-Dub, SGA, and Chet. So you want to continue to surround them with good role players in that respect. At number 18 now, I have Chris Cenac Jr., the freshman center from Houston, going to the Charlotte Hornets. 6'11" with a 7'5" wingspan, 240 pounds. He has a tall, long, mobile big with strong athletic tools who can run the floor like a gazelle. He finishes above the rim and operates as a reliable lob threat. high energy rebounder who consistently impacts possessions. 9.5 rebounds per game last year. 5.6 of them were defensive rebounds, with a 26.1 defensive rebounding rate. He plays with a strong motor and excellent second jump ability. That allows him to extend possessions and stay active around the rim. He's a mobile defender who can cover ground well and recovers quickly in help situations and uses the length to disrupt plays. And he has solid touch as a scorer with some ability to knock down mid-range jumpers and baseline jumpers when left open. And he makes sense for the Charlotte Hornets. Like I mentioned on the lottery edition, my last pick I had, what's his name, Henri Johnson Jr. going there as well. Another activity, intense big man who's a great rebounder and a really good defender. Hornets, like I mentioned in that episode, they need the size. They got pummeled in the paint against that Atlanta Magic team in the play-in and throughout the season. Outside of Kalkbrenner, they don't really have much size on that interior, that toughness, that intensity that you need. And you need rebounding if you want to win at the NBA level. Getting these two guys from Cenac Jr., and if they were to get Henri Johnson, hypothetically, gives them two guys who are 6'10 and taller, who are really good defenders, who block shots, protect that interior, and gives LaMelo Ball two lob threats who can go for that ball and slam it down. You know what I'm saying? And that's what LaMelo Ball, that's the pace he likes to play at. Those guys run the floor extremely well. So I think Cenac Jr., he makes sense here for the Charlotte Hornets. Some of his weaknesses, he's not a guy who's you're going to say, you're going to get the ball down to in the post and like, oh, go get us a bucket. He is a limited offensive creator who's heavily dependent on his teammates. 81% of his shots were assisted last year at Houston. He was 43.3% on non-rim 2-point attempts. Outside the rim, he kind of struggles to score. And his outside shooting remains inconsistent, 33% on low 3-point volume on just 2.5 3-point attempts per game. So that will need to improve. But playing with a guy like LaMelo Ball, he's going to get easy looks. LaMelo Ball plays at almost 100 miles per hour, fast, gets to the lane, really collapses the defense and pulls 2-3 defenders at him at all times due to his ability to put pressure on the rim. Cenac Jr. is going to thrive and feed off that because he's going to be in the dunker spot probably most of the time and get easy looks. And LaMelo Ball's going to throw that thing up. He could throw it with the left or right hand, the lob passes. They're going to get out and run in transition. This is going to be a fun Hornets team just like we saw last year. And if they add these type of big men to their roster, this is a team that already has a solid foundational base. I think next year they can finally make the playoffs. Maybe as an 8th seed or 7th seed, but they need these type of bigs who can run the floor, who bring the defensive activity, the intensity on the rebounding portion of the game. And you need those second chance opportunities because when you're going against physical teams with big men inside, especially in the era we're in now, you need those guys. So I think Cenac Jr. overall is going to be a high motor rim running big who brings value through his rebounding, vertical spacing, defensive activity. I think his tools suggest early on he's more of a rotational upside type of big with offensive limitations and kind of inconsistent defensively, but he does have long-term potential as a starter if he improves those type of things in his game. I think his best case scenario, starting caliber rim running big who anchors the defense, runs the floor, protects the rim, and finishes efficiently in a complementary role. And his floor, backup energy big man who provides rebounding, athleticism, but is limited offensively and kind of spotty defensively. So my comparisons for him, I think his ceiling, maybe a Jaren Jackson Jr., Triple J, who's on the Utah Jazz, former Defensive Player of the Year, who's been an all-star in the NBA. I think maybe Cenac Jr., if his best case scenario irons out the kinks in this game, could maybe be a fringe all-star or maybe just a best solid starting big man. And I think maybe his floor, maybe a Kel'el Ware, what we see with Miami Heat currently. So those are my comparisons for him. At number 19 now, Ebuka Okorie, the freshman guard from Stanford, going to the Toronto Raptors. 6'2", 185 pounds, 19 years old with a 6'7" wingspan. Okorie was one of the most electric scorers in the class last year. A true breakout freshman who averaged over 23 points per game, shooting over 45% from the field and 35% from three on 5.7 3-point attempts per game. He set the Stanford freshman scoring record with 719 points, surpassing a mark that stood for nearly 40 years. He has elite end-to-end speed, and for his size, he has a long arm, 6'7" wingspan that kind of offsets his lack of size as a point guard, especially in today's modern NBA. 6'2" is very short. He's a relentless downhill attacker who consistently puts pressure on defenses. He was ranked in the 90th percentile in rim attacking and attempted more than 7 free throw attempts per game. Exceptional body control. He knows how to control his body around defenders. He can finish through difficult angles and generate contact despite being undersized. A dynamic shot creator who can create his own shot off the dribble and score from all 3 levels. And he also takes care of the basketball, which I always love seeing from my guards. 31% usage rate, 8.7% turnover rate with only 1.9 turnovers per game. And this is a guy who was the guy at Stanford. Defenses were strategizing to stop him, and he still was able to secure the ball and take care of the ball and value those possessions. Especially as a young point guard in college, that's pretty impressive. And he makes sense here for the Raptors. The Raptors, we saw Manuel quickly was injured in the postseason this year. They didn't really have that depth in their backcourt. And Okorie, I know he'll have to get stronger, but I think he could come in and be a guy who can immediately contribute on the offensive end. I think he can give you that scoring, that shot creation ability, and he's also a good defender. He generated 1.6 steals per game, and he used his length, his instincts, and active hands to disrupt opposing guards. So he's not just someone who can come in right away and impact the game offensively and give you some contribution as a rotational piece off the bench. But I think he could be a guy who also could defend ones and be disruptive defensively, get out in passing lanes, be a ball hawk. That's what you want. Especially as a young guy coming in, you need to establish your role first, especially when you're not one of those top 5 picks projected to be the face of the franchise. When you're a mid to late first round pick, you're trying to establish your role and trust with an organization and show the coach that you're worthy of getting those minutes. And I think Okorie can do that. He's an explosive offensive weapon whose speed, scoring instincts, and rim pressure make him one of the most dangerous guards in this class. I think his weaknesses, though, he's an undersized guard. He has a relatively thin frame that'll need to add strength. He's 185 pounds. I think he needs another 15 to 20 pounds of muscle. I think that'll come over time. I'll need to get stronger so he can better absorb contact offensively to finish at the rim and avoid being targeted by bigger guards and wings defensively. Despite constantly getting downhill, he only converted 54% of his attempts at the rim. That'll need to get better. So that suggests room for his improvement as a finisher. He's more of a scorer than a facilitator. He's not really a true playmaker. He's not someone you're going to say, okay, and generate and initiate the offense to create easy looks for other players on his team. He's someone who's more of a scorer who's looking to get his. And he doesn't really manipulate defenses. So that's something we'll have to look at. And he kind of has a low release point, especially when you're 6'2" and you have a low release point. That could be problematic against bigger, more athletic NBA defenders. So that's something he'll have to work on. I think overall, dynamic scoring guard who thrives with the ball in his hands. He has elite speed, downhill aggression, shot creation, and ability to draw fouls. That makes him one of the best explosive offensive players in this class. And if he continues to prove his strength and finishing efficiency along with his playmaking, I think he has the upside to be a high-level NBA starter or maybe even a 6-man type of player in the NBA. Best case scenario, dynamic starting league guard, primary offensive or secondary or third offensive engine who could pressure defenses relentlessly, score at all 3 levels, and become a difficult cover for a team. I think his floor, maybe a microwave scorer off the bench who can utilize his speed, shot creation, and offensive firepower that make him a valuable rotation contributor off the bench. He reminds me a little bit of Kemba Walker when he was at UConn. That's a dynamic scorer, man. Kemba Walker, one thing we worried about when he was coming into the league out of UConn, like that small 6'1" frame. How is that going to thrive in NBA, especially when he's not an elite defender? He's not really known as a playmaker. He's more of a natural scorer as a point guard. And I think Okorie is kind of similar to that in that mold. But I think he's a really good on-ball defender. I think he can really score in many different ways. So I think he'll be just fine at the NBA level. At number 20 now, I have the San Antonio Spurs selected Henri Veesar. I hope I said that right. Or Veesar. The center from North Carolina, 7 foot, 225 pounds, 22 years old, 7'2" wingspan. Veesar is a modern NBA big with excellent mobility who can run the floor exceptionally well for his size. He shot 42% from 3 on 3 attempts per game, giving him a legitimate floor space and value as a stretch 5, which I could see at the NBA level. He's a versatile defender as well, who utilizes his length, mobility, and instincts to protect the rim with 1.2 blocks per game. while possessing the foot speed to survive switches. He's an efficient finisher around the basket. He converted on over 75% of his attempts at the rim. He's a dangerous lob threat in transition and pick and roll situations. He's a high IQ offensive player who can pass out of the post. He can make quick reads and facilitate offense in spurts. And he impacts winning without needing touches through rebounding, screening, rim running, floor spacing, and defensive versatility. And if I'm the San Antonio Spurs, you were the run-up in the NBA Finals. One of my main issues with the Spurs this year was their lack of depth behind Wemby in the front court. I mean, Luke Cornett, I told my friends, I don't trust the guy. And you saw throughout the playoffs, they couldn't really play him because every time Wemby went to the bench, the opposition went on a run because he's a cone defensively. And he's not that athletic. Luke Cornett was a liability in the postseason as they got deeper and deeper into the playoffs, especially once they got to the finals and like the conference finals area. He was someone you couldn't really play because it was such a precipitous drop-off. And obviously, going to be a huge drop-off going from Wemby to whoever. But it's like the guy couldn't even get you second-chance opportunities. He couldn't defend. And he was a liability offensively. Veesar from North Carolina, I think, is a huge upgrade here for San Antonio Spurs. He gives him more depth in the front court. He can switch out and guard on the perimeter. He moves his feet well laterally. He could run the floor extremely well. Athletic, could block shots. And I think that could be great in their second unit. And he's also fits their timeline. You know what I'm saying? He's 22 years old. He's a little bit older coming into the league than say a freshman or sophomore, obviously, because he's, I think, in his junior year coming out of college or senior year. I think, yeah, junior, senior coming out of North Carolina. He's a guy who has vastly improved his game over the years. And I love how he can pass out the post. He can make quick reads. He can facilitate offense in spurts. He's a high IQ player. So even I could see him playing alongside Wemby. Maybe he could play the 4, Wemby could play the 5, or he could, mix it up. But I think he's someone who could really play along Wembayama, who can be that backup big for them long term as they continue to build this potential burgeoning dynasty that they have going on in San Antonio with all the young talent they have with Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, and Wembayama leading the franchise right now. I think they need to add more depth, especially in that front court. Either they go big or they go for a wing at this spot. But I think going with Veesar here, this is a great pick for them. I think if he's there, if I'm San Antonio, I'm picking him because he can do so many different things on the basketball court. He can defend. He can finish well around the rim. And I like a guy who can impact winning without needing the ball in his hands. And he can spread the floor, which is something Luke Cornett can't do. So if I'm the Spurs, I'm looking at him. I think he's a great fit here, great pick. He also need to get stronger. I think he needs to gain at least 15 to 20 pounds of muscle. He's really thin. I think I'll need to improve. Despite shooting 42% from 3, he shot just 61% from the free throw line. That creates questions, I think, about his long-term shooting consistency. But with the Spurs developmental staff there, I don't have worries about that. Look how Dylan Harper vastly improved his game, especially his shooting in the playoffs compared to the regular season when he first started. So I think that's something that'll improve with the developmental staff in San Antonio. They have one of the best in the business and went to OKC, and they have all this young talent. I want to see them continue to add the depth and pieces they need to build this dynasty and the right roster around Wembayama. Overall, I think he's a modern NBA big man teams really highly covet. He combines floor spacing, mobility, rim protection, and high IQ, along with the finishing ability in a versatile package that impacts winning without needing plays called for him. His ability to shoot from deep, switch on defense, run the floor, and make smart reads offensively gives him a valuable role player floor with a room for more based on how his body continues to develop. Best case scenario, I can see him being a high-level starting center in the NBA who can space the floor, protect the rim, and switch out defensively in pick and roll coverages, hedging, everything. He can facilitate offense in spurts and become a two-way connector on a winning team. His floor, I see a good rotational big, glue guy who provides floor spacing, energy rim running, and defensive versatility off the bench, all impacting games without high usage. Reminds me a little bit of Chris Anderson, who was Birdman back in the day. So that's who he kind of reminds me of in terms of comparisons. So if I'm the Spurs, Veesar, however you say his last name, he's the guy. He's the guy. 21, Allen Graves, the forward from Santa Clara, going to the Detroit Pistons. 6'9", 225 pounds, 19 years old, with a 7-foot wingspan. One of the most disruptive defensive playmakers in the class. He averaged 1.9 steals per game. He had a remarkable 4.9 steal and block rate. He produced 4.9 steals and 2.4 blocks per 100 possessions. He moves his feet well. He has long arms. He makes life difficult for opponents on and off the ball. And he's always engaged defensively and displays elite awareness as a help defender. He's a legitimate floor spacing potential type big. He shot 41% from three-point range, 75% from the free throw line. He can screen well. He's a connective tissue type of player. He had a 2.6 assist turnover ratio with a nearly 14% assist rate. And he crashes the offensive glass aggressively. 2.8 offensive rebounds per game. He's someone who I see projecting as a strong rebounder. He averaged 6.5 rebounds per game, 11.5 per 40 minutes. He rolls hard to the rim, creates advantages for teammates, and consistently makes the extra pass. And if I'm Detroit, we saw a team that struggled shooting the three ball. This is a guy I think could give you that floor spacing ability. This is a guy that also could help you on the glass and who could set good hard screens for you. We need more shooters as much as possible around Cade Cunningham. We saw how defenses in the playoffs were able to collapse, tighten the paint, and it made things tough, and they exhausted Cade. But if you could surround Cade with more shooters, guys who could really knock down shots, that's going to open up so many things for him offensively. Yes, they need to try to get someone who can be a legitimate second co-star alongside Cade in Detroit, but you also want to continue to surround him with elite shooters, guys who can space the floor. I think Graves can do that for the Detroit Pistons. And I think he'll be someone who could just sit in the corner, knock down those threes, play effective defense, and rebound the basketball. Be really good in his role. I think he makes sense here for Detroit Pistons. I know he doesn't have the greatest burst. He's not really athletic. He has limited upside as a finisher and overall offensive ceiling. He did struggle finishing around the basket, just 52% on his layups. He'll need to continue to improve his consistency and confidence in his perimeter jumper. Even though he showed flashes, there's still room for improvement there. And I don't think he'll ever be a primary shot creator or offensive end at the NBA level. I think he already has NBA caliber defensive impact. The questions are with his shooting, finishing, and offensive confidence around the rim. I think he's going to be one of the better under the radar defensive prospects in this class. He has instincts, versatility, passing feel, and rebounding. I think give him a clear pathway to carve out a really good NBA role. I think he's going to be a connective tissue type of player who coaches are going to love because he consistently impacts winning without needing touches or plays run for him. I think the best case scenario for him is a versatile potential starter at the NBA level who can guard multiple positions, space the floor, and facilitate offense while becoming a high-level glue guy on a playoff team like the Detroit Pistons if he were to go there. And in his floor, I see a defensive-minded rotational forward whose instincts, toughness, rebounding, winning habits allow him to provide value off the bench for years. I think his comparisons for me, he reminds me of Boris Diaw, just a grounded type of 6'9-ish, 6'8 type forward who's a really high IQ player who can space the floor, who's not going to wow you with athleticism or anything like that, but just a smart overall basketball player who affects winning. And he reminds me of Kyle Anderson as well. So that's who Graves reminds me of, and I think going to the Detroit Pistons makes sense. Number 22, I have Christian Anderson, the sophomore guard from Texas Tech, going to Philadelphia 76ers, 6'2", 165 pounds, 20 years old with a 6'6" wingspan. One of the best shooters in the draft class. He hit over 41% from three while being comfortable shooting off the catch, off the dribble, and movement. He's an excellent facilitator and floor general. 7.5 assists per game. That set the Texas Tech single-season assist record with 244 assists. He's a high-level pick-and-roll creator who can consistently manipulate defenses and create easy looks for his teammates. A crafty scorer, he utilizes his pace, footwork, and touch to finish around the basket despite lacking elite athleticism. He's an active defender who averaged 1.5 steals per game and shows strong anticipation and ability to disrupt passing lanes. One of his best performances this past season with that 34-point and 11 assist game versus Lindenwood, and his 30-point 10 assists a game. That was the first 30-point 10 assists a game, in Texas Tech history. He's a competitive leader who embraces the big moments. He's a great free throw shooter as well, and reinforces his long-term shooting projection as an NBA player. And I think the Sixers, especially when you traded Darren McCain to the OKC Thunder, I think this can make up for it. This is a guy who can give you that scoring ability off the bench, who can shoot the basketball, create his own shot, who's a facilitator as well. He might be a better facilitator than McCain was. I think McCain is a knockdown shooter, which is similar to Anderson. But I think this as kind of makes up for that hurt that we saw with Jared McCain and what he did in the playoffs for OKC, how he was a sniper for them. I think Anderson can come in and fill that role for them next season if they were to draft him, if he was there at 22. Because I think he could be a really good NBA player. I don't know about all-star or anything like that. I don't think he'll ever be an all-star because I think he's kind of undersized for NBA league guard and doesn't have elite length, especially for being short. But I think he could be a guy that can just provide a spark off the bench in terms of scoring productivity and facilitating duties. He doesn't possess elite burst or explosiveness, which I think can make separation tough for him. His size and physical limitations will somewhat cap his defensive upside. I think that'll kind of hurt him, especially since he's on the skinny side. He'll have to really get stronger and add strength at the NBA level. And he was kind of turnover prone, 3.3 turnovers per game, showing he can occasionally force the issue when carrying a heavy creation burden. But I think when you pair him with Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Joel Embiid, you're not going to need him to create so much. So I think that will definitely go down in terms of that aspect of his game. But I think that will be something we'll have to monitor. But I think he also doesn't generate a lot of elite rim pressure against bigger defenders. That will have to improve as well. But I think that'll get better over time, over the course of his NBA career, once he gets stronger and more confidence in his game. He reminds me a little bit of Darius Garland and, ironically, Tyrese Maxey. Undersized guard who has high scoring ability, who can score in bunches, not freakishly athletic, but is crafty and can finish at the rim. And he can facilitate the offense as a secondary type of playmaker. I don't think he'll ever be the playmaker that Darius Garland is, but I think he could be maybe something below that. So I have him going to the Sixers. I think his best case scenario, a solid NBA starting point guard one day who can score in bunches and maybe run the offense either as a primary or secondary creator. And then his floor, maybe a solid spark off the bench, maybe a six-man type of role. So that's why I have Christian Anderson going to the Philadelphia 76ers. Number 23, I have Meleek Thomas, the freshman guard from Arkansas, going to the Atlanta Hawks. 6'5", 190 pounds, 19 years old with a 6'7" wingspan. Elite scorer. He's a true bucket getter at all three levels who can create his own shot anytime. He was very efficient at the rim. He shot 60% at the rim last year for Arkansas, and he finishes well through contact. A knockdown shooter who shot over 41% from three-point range. That ability to be efficient from three-point range on over 5 attempts per game forces defenders to have to stay attached to him. And if I'm the Atlanta Hawks, because in my first part of this mock draft, when I had the lottery edition, I had them selecting Braden Burries. And why I think those guys make sense for the Atlanta Hawks, they need guys who can create their own shot in the half court. These two guys can do that. Meleek Thomas and Braden Burries. We saw what it looked like in the playoffs when outside Nickeil Alexander-Walker and CJ McCollum, nobody was really adept at creating their own shot, especially when those guys were on the bench or they had a cold game. They need added depth in that backcourt who can create their own shot. Especially if they go with a backcourt type of guy, they need someone like that. And I think Thomas can give that to them, especially more depth off the bench. Because Dyson Daniels, as great as he is defensively, I should have mentioned in my last episode, he's a liability offensively. You can sack off him. You can play 5-on-4 as opposition on the defensive end. Because Dyson Daniels, he's petrified to shoot. He can't shoot. He's not looking for a shot. He'll be at the basket and he'll pass it open for a three. He doesn't have the confidence in the offensive game. So he's a liability, basically a no-show offensively. So you need somebody like Meleek Thomas or Braden Burries, who I had going to them in the lottery edition, who can provide that scoring spark. And they give you, solid defense as well, especially Braden Burries. And I think Meleek Thomas as well, who we're speaking about right now, he's a disruptive defender as well, 1.5 steals per game. He knows how to read passing lanes well. He's not an elite defender, but he's not someone I see being a liability on that end. And he's a solid secondary playmaker. He was doing that for Arkansas behind Acuff this past season. Wasn't like, I don't expect him to ever be an elite playmaker or someone who's going to generate offense, but 2.5 assists per game, only 1 turnover per game. He makes those simple reads on kickouts and lobs that I can see at the NBA level. And he was one of only 2 freshmen last year to average 15 points per game or more, convert on better than 40% from three-point range on 5 or more attempts, and 1.5 steals per game. So he was a well-rounded player as a freshman under John Calipari last year at Arkansas. And I like how he fights and navigates screens. He gets skinny, slithers through those screens that the opponents try to set, and he stays with his defender for the most part. And he knows how to utilize his angles to stay attached to his assignment. I think some of his weaknesses, he's not good in the mid-range. 30% on short mid-range shots, 36% on long mid-range shots. He's either rim or three. There's no in between with him. That's something that'll have to improve at the NBA level. He kind of forced the issues. He has some bad early clock, ill-advised shots that I saw when I was watching some film of him. I'm like, he could have got into a better flow with an offense, move the ball around, get a better look, be more patient. I think that kind of comes with a young guy, especially at the guard position. This will get him a little more patient, get within the flow of the offense. You don't have to shoot a shot 5 seconds into the shot clock. Get something better, especially if it's not a good shot. He struggles when that first read isn't available. He needs to get a little bit better at processing that second read and get faster because things are going to speed up at the NBA level. So that's something he's going to have to work on. I think that could kind of lead to him taking those ill-advised rush shots because when he sees that first read isn't open, he kind of is like, oh, he probably panicking to like, oh, I got to shoot this. And also turnovers as well. So I think that's something as he polishes will improve. He needs to get stronger as well. That was something I'll have to work on. His defensive concerns, he can get beaten by stronger guards. I don't think he'll ever be someone who you're going to put on the opposition's best player. He gets too manipulated defensively. And I think at the end of the day, I think his best case, he'll be an explosive scoring guard who can average high-level points, hit tough shots, and develop into a reliable two-way starter. I think his floor, a microwave scorer off the bench, which I think he'll eventually be. I think who will struggle with his efficiency and decision-making against NBA defenses. He reminds me a little bit of Jordan Clarkson. When he's hot, he's hot. But when he's cold, he cold. So I think that's who Meleek Thomas will eventually be. And I think in the end, he makes sense with Atlanta Hawks. They could use more backcourt, half-court type scorers who can get their own. And I think he makes perfect sense for them. 24, Dailyn Swain. Small forward from Texas, going to the New York Knicks. Your reigning defending champion, New York Knicks. 6'7", 210 pounds, 6'10 wingspan, at 20 years old. To me, he is, if you're talking about wings in this class, outside the lottery, he may be the best available wing outside the lottery. He's an elite defensive playmaker. He can disrupt the ball. He is I call a ball hawk. He's a pest defensively. 1.6 point steals per game in each of the last 2 seasons. He posted a 3-point steal percentage at Texas and a 3.2 steal percentage at Xavier the year prior in the Big East. He has an ideal NBA wing frame, excellent size, strength, length, and athleticism. He kind of reminds me a little bit that OG Anunoby archetype as a versatile, multi-positional, 6'7" to 6'9" range type of wing. Strong, athletic. He has outstanding anticipation in passing lanes. He can cover ground quickly, generate deflections, and consistently creates transition opportunities. His offensive impact, I see a powerful downhill slasher with a lightning quick first step that can make him difficult to contain. He finished above the 90th percentile on rim attacks this past season. Crafty finisher who can score off 1 or 2 feet and finish through contact. And I love how he can play off the ball. Who can cut, relocate. He shot 74% on cuts to the rim, 72% on spot up twos. I think he'll need to improve his shooting ability. That's something that definitely he need to work on at the NBA level. 34% from 3 on 3 attempts per game. We need to see that consistency get better. He has some of a low release point. He'll need to improve his release point at the NBA level because I think his shot will get easily blocked with the way it is right now. He could be a streaky shooter from the perimeter, but I think that'll improve over time. And his defensive consistency could waver at times. I think he has the tools to be an elite defender, but I think his intensity on that end is not always there. So I think that'll need to improve. But one thing I loved is from his year at Xavier to Texas, he took a major leap offensively. He increased his scoring average from 11 points per game at Xavier to 17.3 at Texas. He improved dramatically as a creator and facilitator. He averaged 3.6 assists to just 1.7 turnovers per game at Texas. And he had a career low 19.9% assisted field goal rate points. That showed his growing self-creation and ability and offensive independence at Texas. So he's someone I know is a workhorse who's going to do what it takes to help his team win, to be the best possible player to help his team. And he's a strong positional rebounder, 7.5 rebounds per game and 9.2 rebounds per 40 minutes, which is excellent for someone at his position and his size. So I think Swain makes sense for the Knicks here. Knicks, they really have a lot of key guys and good guys on their team, especially we'll see how they keep, if they extend Towns, if they end up signing Mitchell Robinson back. But I think this can give them more depth in their front court, especially at the wing position. OG Anunoby was healthy this postseason, but, he's had some times in his career where he's been injury prone and things of that nature. I think Swain could be that guy off the bench. If Anunoby, you have that insurance, if he is dealing with injury issues, I think Swain could be that guy who could fill in and impact the game and help you right away, who could be a defensive pest and guard the opposition's top two guys or things of that nature, who can get out in transition, who's going to finish at the rim, who just provides that energy and spark off the bench. He's not going to be a guy I think is going to knock down threes right away in his NBA career. We'll see how he develops that, but I think he could be a guy who can impact the game in other ways, putting pressure on the rim, going to the rim and finishing strong, and also creating some opportunities for others, finding guys. He's a smart basketball player, and I think he's just someone who's going to be really good. I think his best case, I could see him in kind of a mold of OG Anunoby. I think that's his ceiling. And that's pretty good ceiling. I see an all-defensive type player if he reaches his ceiling. I think Dailyn Swain could be one of the best steals in this class. This class is so talented. There's a lot of really good guys in the mid to late first round, I think, who are going to be really good NBA players. He can impact winning without needing high usage. And I think his best case scenario, like an Anunoby, he could develop into a reliable secondary or third type of creator and shooter. So that's his best case. And then floor, I see a rotational, defensive-minded wing whose athleticism, versatility, rebounding, and disruptive defensive presence make him a valuable contributor on a playoff team. Even if his jumper never fully develops, I think he can still affect the game in many ways. To me, his comparisons, Jeremy Grant, I see Herb Jones. Athletic, gets to the rim, not an elite three-point shooter, but can do all the little things for a playoff team. So I have him going number 24 to your defending champion, New York Knicks. 25, I have Tarris Reed Jr., the center from UConn, going to the Los Angeles Lakers. 6'10", 265 pounds, 7'4" wingspan, 22 years old. He's an old school, rugged big man who knows how to impose his will with his physicality and toughness on the interior. He's excellent at sealing defenders deep in the paint and establishing position early in possessions. And I think he also has nimble feet. He has advanced footwork for his size. When I saw him in the Big East tournament and also the NCAA tournament when they got to the national championship game, unfortunately they lost to Michigan, he moved so well for his size. I was kind of impressed. And he had some moves down there too. He's comfortable scoring on the block, establishing position. He had those baby hooks, the drop steps, the up and unders, and he could finish with either hand around the basket. He shot 69% at the rim on 15 rim attempts per 100 possessions. That showcases his efficiency as an interior scorer. If you're the Lakers, one thing I looked at all season, one thing many of the media pundits talk about, you guys need more size in the front court. DeAndre Ayton wasn't it, and outside of him, there was no presence down there. There was no one to be that enforcer down low. And I think Reed fits perfectly here for the Lakers. He's someone who can also give it to the ball down low, and he can make a little move. I'm not saying he's going to be your go-to scorer, but I think he's someone who has enough skill and has shown that he's not afraid to face up, do a little post move, and get his baskets, provide some value offensively. He has a brick wall screener who can create separation for ball handlers and rolls hard to the rim, and that goes perfectly when you have a Luka Doncic, who's one of the best pick and roll players we've ever seen. And his ability to finish at the rim and his mobility for his size, I think he could be perfect for Doncic. And he's also a guy who can be an effective lob threat. He has strong hands and is capable of finishing above the rim. So playing with a Luka Doncic is a dream come true if I'm Tarris Reed. If I'm Tarris Reed, I'm trying to be drafted by the Lakers. Because Luka Doncic is any big man who is an effective lob finisher and plays pick and roll a lot. That's the guy I want to play with. He also can create his own shot, especially when it comes to facing up when he's at the rim within 15 feet or more. And he's a defensive anchor. He's protected the rim at UConn. He deterred opponents from attacking the paint. 2.0 blocks per game, posting an elite 8.4 block percentage. He's one of only 2 players in college basketball this past season to average 14 or more points and 2 blocks per game. The other was Zuby Ejiofor, who we're going to get into later. Reed utilized his size, strength, and timing exceptionally well around the basket and consistently altered shots beyond the box score. He was a relentless rebounder with a relentless motor who consistently generated second and third effort opportunities. And that's one thing I think the Lakers need, because Ayton, he doesn't play with that motor, that intensity, that passion. You put Reed in that situation, I think certain games and situations for the Lakers are different. And I think if they keep Ayton, this just gives them added depth in the front court. They need a guy who's 6'10" and up who can help them. He averaged 9 rebounds per game last year and over 13 per 40 minutes. He was a strong positional rebounder who boxes out well, has good fundamentals when it comes to boxing out. He knows how to steal defenders offensively, and he controls the space in the paint. And that's what you want, especially when you have a big physical big man. You need a big man who knows how to utilize and use his size to his advantage and that type of girth. And he does it on the offensive end, stealing his man offensively and boxing out defensively to secure the defensive rebound. He brings that toughness and physicality every night and does a lot of the dirty work that winning teams need. And if you're the Lakers, you need an edge to you. You can't be soft in the paint. I don't think Ayton has that. He doesn't have that mentality. Reed Jr., I think, could bring that to the Lakers. And I think it's a perfect fit. Some of his weaknesses, he's not a floor spacer. He attempted just 4 3-pointers all season, and he did not make one. He's mostly confined to the paint with his offensive game. He's more of a traditional center than a modern-day stretch big. Teams will sag off on him. That will clog driving lanes, so it might make it a little bit tougher for your offensive to be flowing. And he shot just 61% from the foul line. That's something I'll need to improve. And then for someone as physical as him, who plays and bangs down low, he only shot 4.4 free throw attempts per game. He'll need to do a better job at drawing contact consistently to be able to take advantage and capitalize on his physicality and try to get to the foul line for easy points. And then outside of his screening, rolling, and post scoring, he doesn't really provide much offensive versatility, which might definitely be a limitation at the NBA level. I think he's one of the most physically imposing big men in the class. He's a throwback center who excels at the tough physical aspects of the game, protects the rim, controls the glass, and sets crushing screens and finishes efficiently around the basket. I don't think he'll ever be a floor spacing big, but his motor, physicality, and defensive presence give him a strong pathway to becoming a productive NBA center. And the best case for Reed, I think he's going to be someone who's going to be a starting caliber center in NBA. If he reaches his ceiling, he'll be more of a mobile type of traditional type of big man who can anchor a defense, dominate the glass, and protect the rim while providing efficient interior scoring as a pick and roll threat. And I think his floor, a high energy backup center who could rebound, screen, provide toughness and rim protection, and be a valuable rotational big on a playoff team. I think his comparisons for me are Andre Drummond and a bigger version of Isaiah Stewart. So if I'm the Lakers, if Reed is there, I think he's the perfect fit for you guys at 25. Next up, at number 26, we have Koa Peat, the freshman forward from Arizona, going to the Denver Nuggets. 6'8", 245 pounds with a near 7-foot wingspan. The 19-year-old is a physically imposing forward with an NBA-ready frame who I think can immediately handle the physicality at the NBA level. He's a powerful athlete, exceptional strength, and explosiveness. He finished 69.7% of his rim attempts and consistently scores through contact. He moves extremely well laterally and is an impressive vertical athlete for his size. He runs the floor hard, fills lanes in transition, and excels without the ball in his hands. And he possesses excellent touch and power around the basket. He knows how to utilize his strong power dribble before finishing with authority. And he's a highly efficient finisher who understands his role and doesn't need high usage to impact the game. He shot 60% in transition, 62% as the roll man, and 71% on putbacks. He's an excellent cutter and play finisher who thrives around movement and activity. And I think this is perfect for him. The perfect situation playing in Denver. You're playing with Nikola Jokic, who is an Einstein, a supercomputer as a playmaker and offensive hub. we see how he makes other guys around him better. He's gotten guys big contracts due to make them look better due to his superb IQ as an offensive initiator and hub running the offense. Pete fits perfectly within the Denver system because he can get out in transition. He can fill transition lanes. He moves well without the basketball. And Jokic is going to find you. And I think this could be a perfect situation for him in his young career. Play with Nikola Jokic. Because Jokic is going to bring out the best in him. And he kind of could be in that Aaron Gordon role. He kind of is the same size. He's really athletic. He's kind of a tweener, not really a true 4, but also doesn't have the skills to be a true 3. But Aaron Gordon obviously developed as he, progressed throughout his career with his 3-point shooting and everything, and has become a really good NBA player. Probably, to me, out of the non-All-Stars in the league, he might be up there in terms of the best non-All-Stars in the NBA. And I think Pete could be that type of guy, similar to Aaron Gordon, who could play that type of role as a cutter, play finisher for Denver, and he just fits perfectly within the system. He's also a connective passer who averaged 2.6 assists to just 1.6 turnovers per game, which is good for a 1.6 assist to turnover ratio. He has pretty advanced passing instincts. He knows how to make smart reads, smart passes. And he has a strong lower body physical strength that I think could help him defend the stronger 3s and 4s at the NBA level. He knows how to utilize his strength well in the post and should be able to hold up against physical forwards and be able to front his man defensively. He has great winning traits that I love. He doesn't require touches to be effective and can impact the game through screening, cutting, rebounding, defense, and passing. He plays within himself and understands how to complement higher usage teammates. So it goes back again to my point why I think he fits perfectly with a Jokic, who's going to have the ball in his hands and dominate the ball most of the time offensively for Denver. And we saw with Denver, we don't know if Aaron Gordon can stay healthy. His last 2 seasons now, he's dealt with injuries and he's getting older. I think Pete could be that guy who could kind of, if you want to build another championship team around Jokic, he could probably be that guy next up after Gordon who could kind of fill in that type of role based on how you develop him. Because I think he could do everything Gordon can do in terms of moving around the ball, being athletic, finishing for lobs, just doing all those type of little things, rebounding, playing defense. He's a high IQ player. The shot will have to get better, obviously. But I think just similar to Aaron Gordon, he wasn't a shooter when he first came into the league. This gives Denver Nuggets depth, and if he turns out to be a really good player, he's on a rookie contract, then that can give you the flexibility to move off Aaron Gordon if you want to, especially if he proves he can't stay healthy, which he has in the last 2 postseasons now, which probably has cost them another chance at a title. And when you have a guy like Jokic, a talent like him doesn't really come along often, especially when you're the Denver Nuggets. No free agents are really coming to play in Denver. So you want to get a guy like Pete, especially in the draft, who can turn to the high-quality role player. He'll need to improve his off-ball awareness defensively and his overall defensive consistency away from the ball. He recorded less than a steal and block per game. That needs to improve, especially when he has the size to be at least a solid defender. Like I said, his shooting will be his major swing skill. That will determine how long he lasts in the NBA and what he ultimately becomes in the NBA. 35% from 3, and he attempted just 23 total threes for Arizona last year. He shot just 62% from the foul line. That will need to improve dramatically. His jumper can be rushed and mechanical. When I saw when I was watching the film, he leans forward a lot on his jumper, which can kind of lead to a tough miss and hard miss, especially on the back rim. He needs to improve his touch and mechanics on his shot, and he needs to improve his ball handling ability and learn how to create his own shot. But I think overall, he has an NBA-ready body, strong finishing ability, defensive versatility, and a high feel for the game. He's kind of a modern-day power forward who impact winning in a variety of ways. Best case scenario, I see a high-level 2-way starting forward, defends multiple positions, creates advantages as a slasher, and could be maybe a secondary or tertiary type of playmaker who could develop into a reliable perimeter shooter. His floor, a valuable rotation forward whose strength, athleticism, passing, and off-ball impact can make him a role player on a playoff team. Comparison, I see a young Aaron Gordon, a highly dynamic, athletic type of player, great in transition, great cutter, plays above the rim, who's a finisher, but not a great shooter yet. Needs to improve his shot creation ability. He reminds me of a young Aaron Gordon. I think going to Denver is a perfect situation for him. And they need another type of guy like that. So Koa Peat going to the Denver Nuggets at number 26. Next up at number 27, I have Jayden Quaintance, the forward from Kentucky, going to the Boston Celtics. 6'10", 252 pounds, 7'5" wingspan. The 18-year-old is one of the most physically gifted big men in the class with elite defensive tools. When you have a 7'5" wingspan with enormous hands and you're still growing into your body, that's scary. He's a terror around the rim. 2.6 blocks and 1.1 steals per game over 24 games at Arizona State. He is an elite shot blocker. 5.1 blocks per 100 possessions with a 5% block rate. He's shown the ability to really be a defensive anchor and alter shots and really control that area of the paint, which is what you want to see your big man do. He has an NBA-ready frame. He has broad shoulders, strength, and the physicality needed to battle inside at the NBA level. He's nimble for his size, with light feet, and he has explosive leaping ability, and he moves well for a big man. He projects as an elite rim runner who can thrive as a lob threat and finisher alongside a high-level playmaker. We'll see if Jaylen Brown gets moved or Jason Tatum this offseason, because there's a lot of rumors now of Giannis potentially getting traded to the Boston Celtics, so we'll see what happens. But as of right now, as I record this on Sunday, June 21st, on Father's Day, if he plays with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they're going to create easy looks for him. And one thing about the Celtics, because he shot 75% as a roll man, so he's an elite rim runner, and he can be an elite roll man as a roller and finisher. They need more depth in their front court, the Boston Celtics. They got pummeled in the paint last year. The only size they had really is Nemes Keita. I don't even want to count Nikola Vucevic. He was a liability. He can't defend. He's a cone defensively. And he couldn't even knock down 3-point shots in the playoffs this year. And he's supposed to be some offensive threat. You need a guy, even though he has injury problems, he tore his ACL in Quaintance. That we have some, concerns on if he can stay healthy. But he has a lot of upside. And you need size down low. You need a active big man who can block shots, who rebounds the ball, who rolls hard to the rim, athletic, who's a lob threat. Because you need someone in that second unit who can provide that for you. And he closes out quickly. He has great foot speed. He can defend in space. He can hedge over and guard guards. He can do all these type of things. I think he's one of the better defensive prospects in this class because he combines the length, mobility, and the instincts of a really good defender. And he's a strong rebounder who knows where the ball is going. He's like a great tracker of the ball. He knows how to find the basketball off the rim, and he knows how to get in position. He averaged over 10 rebounds per 40 minutes over his last 2 seasons of college basketball. One thing we'll have to question, though, is durability. He missed the entire season with a torn ACL, like I just mentioned. His offensive game still needs refinement. He's a very raw offensive player and needs a lot of polish. He shot just 90% from 3 at Arizona State and struggled at the free throw line, shooting 48%. His free throws shooting dropped dramatically for some reason. And I think that will need to vastly improve because you don't want to have a situation where teams can just hack him and force him to the foul line. And then he's a liability on that end of the floor. And I think if you're the Celtics, I think it's a perfect fit because also he can develop well in Boston. They need someone similar to, I think he reminds me of Robert Williams, Time Lord. They're in their first iteration, early years of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, when they went to that first finals in 2022. He reminds me of Time Lord. Around the same size, really athletic, long arms, go-go gadget type arms, can block shots as a rim deterrent, but is raw offensively. Not really someone you're going to see as a guy creating his own shot. He needs to continue to become more disciplined defensively. He kind of fall over pump fakes, but I think he's one of the best defensive bigs in this class. He's like a modern day defensive big who can change games without needing the ball. Elite rim protection, rebounding, athleticism, giving an immediate NBA role. His shooting and offensive development and injury history will determine how high his ceiling goes. Best case, defensive anchor, starting caliber center who protects the rim at an elite level, switches when needed, finishes as a roller, and develops enough shooting to at least stay on the floor. His floor, I see energy big and defensive specialist whose rim protection, rebounding, and athleticism make him a valuable rotational center. even if the offensive game never fully develops. So I have him going to the Boston Celtics. At number 28, I have Bennett Stirtz, the guard from Iowa, going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. 6'3", 6'6" wingspan, 185 pounds. The 22-year-old senior is an elite dynamic shot creator who can score from all three levels with a deep bag of moves. He has step-back threes, the pull-ups, the difficult off-the-dribble shots. When I was watching some of his film, I'm like, yo, this guy could play in the NBA as a great rotational piece off the bench right away. Stirtz is one of the most productive offensive guards in college basketball last season. He was the only player to average 19 or more points, 4 or more assists, and a steal, while shooting at least 45% from the field and 35% from three over the last 2 college basketball seasons. He's a high-level shooter with beautiful shot mechanics, with a quick release and the ability to get shots off against tight defensive pressure. He's keen on drawing contact, shooting over 7 free throw attempts per game the last 2 seasons. And he shot over 35% from three on over 4 attempts per game at both Drake and Iowa, while utilizing a high usage role at over 25% usage rate. Despite his limited athleticism, he's an effective finisher who finished over 70% of his shots at the rim per 100 possessions. He has a high-level basketball IQ who's really good in pick-and-roll situations. He understands defensive angles and consistently makes the right reads, whether attacking the rim, hitting the dunker spot, or finding shooters on the perimeter. And one thing I also love about his game, as a point guard, he could pass with either hand. I've seen him make passes with his left hand, out of pick-and-roll situation with his left, right, whether throwing wraparound passes in the corner for the shooter, lob passes, you name it. He creates advantages through space, patience, and skill, rather than someone who is relying on his athleticism, because he's not a dynamic athlete by any stretch of the imagination. I want to see how his game translates to the NBA level. Iowa's not really known for, producing NBA players, so I want to see how his game translates. I think he's a guard who can space the floor, create shots, and provide secondary playmaking next to another type of offensive star. In this case and scenario, Anthony Edwards, if he goes to Minnesota. And I think this is perfect what Minnesota needs. One thing we've been talking about over the last couple of seasons with the Timberwolves, Mike Conley is not what he used to be. He's older. He's on his last legs, tail end of his career, twilight of his career. You need a point guard who can create his own shot and run the offense alongside Anthony Edwards. And this makes even more sense now, considering Dante DiVincenzo will be out all of next season, most likely, with a torn Achilles. So this is the perfect pick if I'm the Timberwolves. If he's there, I'm going with Stirtz. He's everything you need, because you need a point guard. You need more help in the backcourt to help alleviate pressure off Edwards. And Stirtz, guy who played 4 years, to be able to come in right away, play within the system, and run the offense. If he's able to do that, that could help Anthony Edwards to do what he does best, which is get buckets, be that true shooting guard that he is. I'm not saying Stirtz is going to be someone who's going to start. Maybe he could be a guy who can run the second unit, but I think he could be someone who could come in right away and provide something. And he's a really good shooter, so he's going to be someone I think could space the floor as well. And he has a quick trigger. He gets that shot off quick. So I think he could help the Timberwolves in many ways. And that's something they have sorely lacked the last couple of years, is that help in the point guard and the depth at the point guard spot. He is limited athletically. That's one of my concerns with him. He doesn't have elite strength or burst or vertical explosion compared to NBA guards. So I think he'll struggle finishing against stronger defenders, trying to absorb contact. That's something I need to see. He's already 22 years old, so I don't know how much more room there is for him to be, a real elite player. How much better is he really going to get? And he needs to improve. He could impact games without carrying a massive offensive workload. Like, when he's not carrying an offensive workload that's massive, can he still impact games? I think he'll be even better now that he's playing with an Anthony Edwards or Jaden McDaniels, guys like Tarris Reed. I think that's going to make him even a better shooter because he's going to have more open looks. And then also as a playmaker, those guys are going to finish better off his passes. So I think Stirtz, if he were to drop to 28 and the Timberwolves select him, this is a perfect fit for him. I think he's a modern offensive guard who wins with his skill, shooting, and basketball IQ. Best case scenario, starting offensive guard who becomes a high-level shot maker, a tertiary type of creator who can be a reliable floor spacer in a playoff rotation. And his floor, backup point guard who could provide shooting, scoring, and playmaking off the bench while being kind of maybe a liability defensively. I think he reminds me of Peyton Pritchard of the Boston Celtics. Kind of an undersized guard, but an elite shooter who can really space the floor, can create his own shot. It's not just someone who has to rely on others to give him the ball and create open looks for him. He can dribble, penetration, shot creation, all those type of things. So I have Stirtz going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Number 29, Zuby Ejiofor, center, St. John's. I have him going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. 6'8", 245 pounds, with a 7'2" wingspan. The 22-year-old is the reigning Big East Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. Shout out to Rick Pitino, who I got to speak to at the 2024 Big East Media Day. Because, man, he has transformed this young man's game. Before Rick Pitino came onto the scene at St. John's, I'm going to tell you right now, Ejiofor probably wouldn't have been an NBA player. He probably wouldn't have been in this position to be a potential late first-round pick. He transformed his mentality, his game, and it showed these last 2 years at St. John's. He improved dramatically in all aspects of the game. He's a relentless workhorse who plays with nonstop energy, toughness, and physicality on both ends of the floor. Despite being an undersized center, he compensates that with his strength, his effort, and his positioning, especially when it comes to rebounding. I think he's going to be an impactful interior defender and an energy type of big man throughout the course of his career. He was an elite offensive rebounder who consistently created second chance opportunities. He averaged 3.3 offensive rebounds per game last season and led the NCAA with 4.4 offensive rebounds per game in 2024-25. And if I'm a team, I'd love to have someone who could rebound the offensive boards. That gives us more possessions, which can help us win games. He's a switchable defender defensively who's capable of defending pick and roll actions. He can provide help defense, stay attached to guards. He has quick feet. When I was watching some of those games NCAA tournament, especially that game against Kansas, he was getting out on those screens, man, and guarding them guards. Especially Darren, he was guarding Darren Peterson. I think he forced a turnover on Darren Peterson on one play, if I don't remember. And he was really active in that game. And I said, man, he moves very well for a big man, which is what you want to see in the modern NBA. That's what teams want and need. That's what you have to be able to do. He has one of the best defensive instincts in the class. He anticipates passing lanes well. He consistently jumps predictable passes. He's excellent at fronting the post and preventing opponents from establishing deep positions. He's a disruptive defender with active hands who can pressure ball handlers and create turnovers. And he was a really good rim protector. He averaged 2.1 blocks per game last year with a 7.2 block percentage. Offensively, he was a physical finisher who embraces contact and constantly attacks the rim. He has a reliable right-handed hook shot and drop step counter around the rim. He shot 66% at the rim last season. He's a strong foul drawer who averaged over 6 free throw attempts per game over the last 2 years. And he improved as a playmaker. He increased his assists from 1.6 to 3.5 per game. He's an effective short roll creator who uses his gravity to find open shooters and make quick reads. And I love his winning traits. He brings that intensity, that high motor, every possession who can impact the game with his rebounding, his defense, screening, and effort plays. And if you want to win a championship, you need these type of guys. We've seen it with the New York Knicks, Josh Hart. The Warriors had it with Draymond Green, Golden State Warriors. They're in their dynasty run. You need those type of guys who can do the dirty work, who don't care about the numbers, that can help you win championships. And I think Ejiofor can be that type of guy for any team that ends up drafting him. He has a mentality and physicality of a playoff-style big man. Some of his weaknesses, his shooting will be a major concern, 30% from three on only 1.5 attempts per game. He's limited as a floor spacer. I don't see him ever being a guy who's going to be a knockdown three-point shooter. He's still hesitant from his mid-range, though sometimes I watched him during his St. John's years, and he'll have a shot right there in the mid-range, and he tries to go into a tougher shot at the rim when he could have just easily shot the 15-footer. He needs to work on that aspect and confidence in his game. He's undersized for a center, 6'8", 6'7", maybe. And he doesn't really have the skills for a wing, and he's not tall enough to be a true center or power forward. So he's kind of a tweener, if we have to be honest. He struggles to finish over length, despite his shooting efficiency at the rim. That's something he'll have to improve on the NBA level. And he won't be able to bully guys in the paint at the NBA level like he did in college. So he'll have to get more crafty, more skilled. I think he's one of the most toughest, impactful big men in this class. I think he's going to carve out an NBA role through his rebounding, defensive instincts, and rim protection, along with his motor. Best case, a starting caliber defensive center who can anchor a playoff defense, especially maybe in the second unit. He can dominate the glass, switch in space, and develop enough offensive skill that will punish teams that play small. His floor, I see a high-energy rotational big who can impact winning through rebounding, rim protection, screening, and defense, even without becoming a reliable shooter or offensive threat. He reminds me of Jalen Williams on OKC Thunder, not the All-NBA one. I'm talking about the role player one, the one that wasn't really hurt this past season. That Jalen Williams. And Xavier Tillman. And I think he makes sense here for the Cleveland Cavaliers, because one thing we have always questioned with the Cavaliers since their tenure with Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, they seem to be missing that intensity that you need come postseason time. They don't have that toughness that in the interior. They need a guy who brings that edge, that toughness, and can kind of get their teammates going, who provides that spark, that energy, that intensity, especially in the playoffs. If you want to get into the next level, you need to have that mentality. And we saw how they got pretty much punked against the New York Knicks. And Ejiofor, he brings that toughness. He played in New York with St. John's. He knows what it's like to play under Rick Pitino, who's one of the toughest coaches to ever play for. And I think he could bring that edge, that intensity, that motor on both ends of the floor for a Cleveland Cavalier team and be a good role-playing rotational big man for them and provide second chance opportunities for them as well, especially if they do decide to move off Jared Allen this offseason. Or even though they said Evan Mobley might be untouchable, we'll see what happens. But if they do decide to move off Jared Allen, he could be a guy who could come in and be a guy off the bench who can, I think, impact the game right away, especially on the defensive end and rebounding wise. So at number 29, I have him going to Cavaliers, and I think he makes perfect sense for them. And to cap off this mock draft, which has been amazing, doing this two-parter with you guys in the first round on what is a loaded class. At number 30, with the final pick in the first round, I have Isaiah Evans, the sophomore forward from Duke, going to the Dallas Mavericks. A 6'6 wing, 180 pounds with a 6'9 wingspan. The 20-year-old is a 6'6 athletic wing with one of the most valuable NBA skills coveted in today's NBA, shooting. He's a high-volume shooter who can space the floor and capable of creating his own offense without constantly needing the ball. He was an elite shooter for Duke. He shot 36% from three on 7.5 attempts per game. That is high volume and solid efficiency for a shooter. He made 101 threes on 280 attempts, and he's comfortable shooting with volume. He's great off the ball. He utilizes his flare screens, ghost screens, and handoffs to get open. He has a quick release, which makes him hard to contest. And he has deep NBA range. I'm not just talking about regular thing. He can shoot that thing from deep. And that pairs perfectly with the Dallas Mavericks. And I had the Dallas Mavericks in my first part. The lottery edition selected Mikael Brown Jr. because they could use a secondary shot creator to alleviate pressure off Cooper Flagg and Kyrie Irving if they keep Kyrie Irving this offseason. But Evans, I think it makes sense here because the Mavericks need shooting. That's something they kind of struggled with last season. They need floor spacers. And he makes sense for them. He's one of the best shooters in the class. I think he's going to be one of the best 3-and-D players in this class. I think he could be another guy who could be a steal. And another caveat, he played with Cooper Flagg. He played with him at Duke. They have that chemistry already. They're kind of similar. They're kind of familiar with one another's strengths and weaknesses. And he already has that chemistry and cohesiveness, that camaraderie playing with Cooper Flagg back at Duke during 2024-25. They're in Cooper's only season at Duke. And I think they could pair well with one another. Cooper could drive to the rim, kick it out to Evans for three-pointers, also playing alongside Kyrie Irving. He's going to get easy setups playing alongside those guys who are going to put a lot of pressure on defenses. Defenses are going to focus on them, and that's going to create a lot of open looks for him downtown. He's an athletic finisher as well. He's not just a guy who can shoot shots. He can attack closeouts well. He has long strides that help him get downhill. He's a pretty good finisher at the rim. He can finish above the rim. And he also shot over 67% at the rim at Duke last season. 44% on short mid-range shots, 35% on long mid-range shots. He's a solid lateral mover defensively. He can get down in the stands, defend. I don't think he'll ever be an elite defender, but I think he could be a guy who's at least serviceable defensively and won't be a liability. He needs to get stronger. That's something he'll have to improve. He's only 180 to 185 pounds. He weighs as much as I do, and he's 3 inches taller than me. He's going to have to get stronger. He can struggle against NBA wings. He's not a playmaker by any stretch of imagination. He averaged under an assist per game throughout his 2 seasons at Duke. You look at his overall averages, under assists per game. That has to get better. He needs to make better reads and have better decision-making and get faster with his processing. He needs to get stronger so he goes to finish better through traffic. He's only really good in open space and in transition when he has a clear lane. He'll have to get better at that at the NBA level because not everything's going to be clear cut at the NBA level. You got to be able to finish through traffic. And his defensive consistency can kind of lapse, which we kind of see with young guys sometimes. They kind of had a, fell asleep there defensively where they kind of lose their man. I was watching some film on him, and he'll lose his assignment. He'll kind of overhelp when he didn't need to, or he didn't help when he needed to. I think his defensive fundamentals and IQ will have to get better. I think overall, though, he's a modern NBA wing who possesses elite shooting. He's a good enough athlete who can play above the rim. And he moves so well without the ball. He's one of the best off-ball movers in this class. If I had to say who the best off-ball movers in this class are in terms of relocating and being elite shooters, it's him and Cameron Carr from Baylor. They might be the best in terms of like 3-and-D potential. I think these guys could be legit. Best case scenario, I see a starting wing who spaces the floor, attacks closeouts, and provides two-way value. And the floor, I see a rotational shooter who could provide spacing and athleticism. He might not be a guy who could rely on defensively, but I think he'll still be an NBA player. And then he reminds me of Jordan Hawkins, an Isaiah Joe on the OKC Thunder, and a poor man's shorter version of Brandon Ingram. Skinny, can score, not an elite defender, a good athlete, but not an elite athlete, but can kind of be inconsistent at times, bro. But I think he makes perfect sense for the Dallas Mavericks. I think he fits everything what they need. We'll see if he even falls to here, but I think if they get him and nab him here at 30, this is a steal for them. And he already has the chemistry with Cooper Flagg. So it's a win-win. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for my full 2026 NBA first round mock draft here on Hardware Hoops. I hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive on each prospect and where I believe each prospect will be going of all the first round prospects and what is projected to be a loaded class and historic class for the ages. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like, subscribe button, share anybody you know who loves basketball. Share any NBA junkies, hoops junkies, as we talk here on Hardware Hoops, all the time. I'm your host, DJ Hamilton. This is Hardware Hoops presented by DJ Sports Show, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.